Okay, so we've gone through recognizing how we can get a perfect square trinomial when we have a perfect square trinomial. The only task left is actually using the perfect square trinomial to help us solve a quadratic equation, and that's what we're going to do now. Let's use the method for completing the square for an equation of this form. So we've got 4x squared minus 8x plus 3 equals 0. That's for the right form, so how do we do this? Well, it says the first step is to move the constant term c to the right. So for us, that means we're going to subtract 3 from both sides of our equation to rewrite this equation like this. 4x squared minus 8x equals negative 3. Okay. Now the second step says we want to divide all terms, by the leading coefficient a. Well, in this case, our leading coefficient a is 4, so we're going to divide every single term by 4. And the reason we want to do that is we want a leading coefficient of 1. That was the easiest way to recognize the perfect square trinomial. So if we do that, we get x squared minus 2x equals negative 3/4. So the third step says add 1/2 of the middle coefficient squared to both sides to complete the square. In other words, you think just like we did before. If I had x squared minus 2x, what would you have to add to make this into a perfect square trinomial? Well, 1/2 of 2 is 1, and 1 squared, well, that's 1. So we add 1 to both sides of this equation to make it a perfect square trinomial on the left-hand side. Remember, to balance an equation, you must add whatever you do on the left to the right. All right, so now we factor on the left. Factor on the left-hand side, we're going to get x, square root of the first term, minus the sign from the second term, and 1, the square root of the last term, squared. We're going to have to simplify on the right. Now remember, if you add negative 3/4 to positive 1, negative 3/4 plus 1 is the same thing as 4/4. And so we're going to get a positive 1/4 on the right-hand side. Now we can use step 1, use the square root property to solve this. And we saw this in 9.1. We take the square root of both sides and we say that x minus 1 is going to equal to positive or negative the square root of the quantity on the right, so that's the square root of 1/4. Well, don't forget, the square root of 1/4 is the same thing as the square root of 1 over the square root of 4. So x minus 1 is actually equal to plus or minus 1/2. So we're going to get two solutions right here. And it looks like we're going to get two rational solutions even, which is even better for us. We're going to get 1/2 added or subtracted to 1. So we add 1 to both sides. So x will be equal either to 1 minus 1/2, or x will equal 1 plus 1/2. Which is to say, x will equal 1/2 is one of our solutions, and x will equal 3/2 is another one of our solutions. So the method of complete a square means that we do all of these things. And some of the key terms, moving the constant to the right so we have a nice constant term, dividing all terms by the leading coefficient, and then finally adding 1/2 of the middle term squared after the leading coefficient is 1 to both sides to complete the square. After that, we can use the square root property to solve for x directly. Okay, so more examples coming up in the next video.